Death, taxes, and Warren Gatland picking his team nice and early. Tuesday afternoon, Wales team announcement. Thank you very much, Warren. I mean, I think the WRU will be quite happy that Warren's taken the focus back onto the rugby field. But lots of people have been saying, oh, Razzie Erasmus did this. Is Warren Gatland just copying him? Warren Gatland was naming his team early before it was cool. So let's have a look at the side that he has picked. And as we get into this, let me remind you, there'll be loads of Six Nations content coming on this channel. So please hit subscribe, hit like, and leave your comments on what I have to say about the Wales lineup and the Wales-Ireland matchup this weekend, and what you think about this 23 as we look at it, which has Gareth Thomas, has Ken Owens and Thomas Francis in the front row. The Sheriff at hooker is the captain. He's the main man. Thomas Francis. Now, as an Englishman, right, I'm quite envious of Thomas Francis. He used to be the butt of a bit of a joke, because sometimes you'd look at the stats after a game and it would say ball carries 0, tackles 0, and all he really did was scrummage. He's evolved his game, so he does much more than that now. But I'll tell you something. If I could be guaranteed that England were going to have a rock solid scrum, I would take it right now, and I wouldn't worry about any of the ball carries or fancy handling stuff that goes on. And so for that reason, Thomas Francis, I think, is worth his weight in gold, and that's quite a lot of gold. Second row, Adam Beard, easily the best lock in this Welsh squad. Probably would have been combined with Will Rowlands, you would think, but you never know, because Warren Gatland and Alan Wynne-Jones, and the war horse is back. He's starting. A lot of responsibility on his shoulders as well. No Chris Chunza in sight in this 23. And if he was going to appear, the thought was it could have been in that number 5 jersey. And you do wonder, and one of the stories of this team, I think, is the lack of, total almost, on the starting 15 anyway, lack of English-based players. And you wonder if the fact that they were away for some of the training week last week in this new Warren Gatland regime means that he hasn't picked those players for this matchup. I wonder, is that why Tommy Raffel's on the bench? Is that why Chris Chunza's not involved? Although Dafydd Jenkins is involved and on the bench, so maybe that means Dafydd Jenkins is rated by Warren Gatland above Chris Chunza. Nick Tompkins, another one, English-based, not in the 23. Is that why? I guess we'll find out in due course as Warren Gatland picks his teams through the Six Nations. But it's noticeable here as we move into the back row, which is, I think, one of the areas Wales fans were most excited about. And I think, generally, they've got the back row they wanted. Jack Morgan, who's been playing out of his skin for Ospreys, is given the responsibility for only his 7th cap. And, I mean, the way he plays, I expected him to be much bigger. But I stood next to him recently at the Leicester Ospreys game. He's not that big. He plays, he's just got a massive heart, and he plays bigger than he looks, and he's a tough lad with a lot of talent. And I'm excited to see Jack Morgan again in the Welsh jersey alongside club teammate Justin Tipperick and alongside Taulupe Faletau as well. That's a pretty good, well-balanced back row, isn't it? And Warren Gatland had a lot of options, and I quite like the look of that. And I think Jack Morgan does put it about physically, but he's much more than that. And that's the first little sign that we might be evolving the Gatland ball. And maybe Gatland ball isn't what we're going to be seeing. Onto the halfbacks. They pick themselves comfortably the best in their position. Love Thomas Williams. Really good service, which Dan Bigger will love. Snipes around the base when it's on. Great link-up play. Got a lot of time for him. And Dan Bigger is just a hero. The bigger the stage, the bigger he plays. He's a winner with the attitude and mentality that just brings other people up to his level. And he desperately wants to win. That's why he chops his at the referee, but that's why his teammates absolutely love him. And he is class, not just as a kicking, pragmatic 10, and he will get Wales into the right areas, but his game overall is absolutely awesome. And I love him. So I think he gives Wales an edge. And Wayne Pivac must be sitting at home watching this. He will be sitting at home watching this game at the weekend thinking what might have been, if only Dan Bigger had been available in the autumn. He is that important. The wings. No Lewis Rees-Zammit. I think he's carrying a knock, isn't he? I think he's back for England. But that is a shame. No Liam Williams. I think he's carrying a little knock. But may well be involved this weekend nonetheless. I think Warren Gatland said that Lee Halfpenny's got a little hip knock. And so he's named as fullback but may not start. And Liam Williams is currently recovering from a knock, but may be recovered, and if Halfpenny has to drop out, then Liam Williams will come in. Lewis Rees-Zammit and Liam Williams they're two big blows. I think they'd both be starting in the back three if they were fit. So that is no doubt a blow for Wales. However, on the other wing, Wales have got one of the most underrated international rugby players. I think Josh Adams is class. I'll say this. If I could pick from every winger in every international squad for the Six Nations, the two wingers I would pick would be the top choice, Damien Penaud, and the second choice would be Josh Adams. I think he's that good. And even if Lewis Rees-Zammit and Liam Williams were fit, I'd still pick Josh Adams. He is an awesome finisher, brilliant under the high ball, massive defensively, work rate off his wing, and just a class act. So Wales have got someone on their wing better than their opposition have got on theirs. And that could make the difference in a tight game. Rio Dyer, big game for him. This is huge. So, yeah, a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. And that just leaves the centres. George North is an international outside centre now. I was dubious about the change at first. I was completely wrong. He looks genuinely a class act at 13. Joe Hawkins. This is the other big selection, isn't it? Where was Warren Gatland going to go? If it had been Gatland ball with the Jamie Roberts direct 12 trucking it up a little bit, then I think we would have seen Mason Grady or even to a lesser degree Kieran Williams. No Nick Tompkins. Is that because of the whole based in England thing? I actually just think he's handing the keys to Joe Hawkins and he likes what he sees there. And I like what I see when I look at Joe Hawkins. And I think this is a good sign for Wales because Joe Hawkins is the most all-round 12 that Wales have got. His distribution skills are excellent. And I would be optimistic if I were a Wales fan, just purely on the selection of Joe Hawkins, because I think this hints that Warren Gatland is going to do all of the nuts and bolts that he always does. His teams are going to work hard, be well organised, have a massive defence. But when they have the ball, with Joe Hawkins, they can do something a little bit different. And that's where they were found wanting in the autumn. They looked a bit like they were lacking ideas when they had the ball. With Dan Bigger back and with a distributing 12 there, then when you get Liam Williams and Lewis Rees-Zammit back, I think Wales are in business. So I'm quite encouraged by that. Looking at the bench, Dafydd Jenkins, a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. The front row, the depth isn't quite there for Wales. There is a drop-off starting to back up, isn't there? But Scott Baldwin back for his first game in 5 or 6 years. So a massive amount of responsibility on his shoulders. Owen Williams, that's a nice story. And Alex Cuthbert on the bench as well. So they've got some impact off the bench. As for who they're going to be playing, well, they're taking on Ireland, of course. We don't know their team because Andy Farrell, boring. He's waiting till like Thursday or something. Come on, Andy. But this is what I expect the Ireland team to be, that Wales will be playing. Andrew Porter, Dan Sheehan and Tyg Furlong with James Ryan and Tyg Byrne. Peter O'Mahony, Josh van der Fleer and Caelan Doris being the pack with Jameson Gibson-Park and Johnny Sexton at halfback. Stuart McCloskey, Gary Ringrose. That 12 position for Ireland is a big question mark. The build-up on Saturday will be about the 12s because it's a key cog getting the ball out to some of these dangerous back lines and defensively, and you're going to have relative inexperience there on both teams. It could be Bundy Aki, could be Jamie Osborne even, but I expect it to be Stuart McCloskey, Gary Ringrose outside with Hansen and Lowe on the wings and Hugo Keenan at fullback. But if that was the 15, let's say, and you had the Wales 15 available, what would your combined team be? If you could have all 30 players, what would it be? I wonder if the comments might rage at me if you're a Welsh fan for this, because I put 4 Welshmen in a combined 15. 11 of that Ireland team I put when you have all 30 players available to select. And I think the biggest and most telling area for Wales is that the front 5 for Ireland looks very, very good. And quite often you see Ireland score points and score tries or win penalties in the last 10, 15 minutes of games to win or to take a game away from an opposition. That is quite often as a result of the previous 60 or 70 minutes, the front 5 wearing their opposition down and tiring them out. And we've seen Tyg Furlong go for 80 minutes before. Same with Andrew Porter and Dan Sheehan. They've got engines and they make the opposition front 5 work. Only Adam Beard gets in there. And in the back row, Taulupe Faletau gets in, but only because I moved Caelan Doris across to 6. I think Ireland have the edge in the pack. With Lewis Rees-Zammit and with Liam Williams, I'd be saying that I think Wales have the edge out wide. And that's why we'll see how Rio Dyer gets on. It's a real shame for Wales that those guys aren't available. I would quite happily take Thomas Williams as the scrum half. I think a toss of a coin between him and Jameson Gibson-Park. Just think Gibson-Park's gets the tempo up a little bit more, but I do love Thomas Williams. So at halfback, maybe Wales have got the personnel to manage the game. And if Wales can keep it tight, then actually Dan Biggar and Thomas Williams, I think, could be difference makers. And that's even saying Johnny Sexton will be on the opposition. I've put Stuart McCloskey in there only purely because we haven't got enough game tape and don't know enough about Joe Hawkins at international level. We are going to find out on Saturday. He could have a massive impact on how this game goes. Because if they can find an opportunity for Josh Adams, as I've already mentioned, they've probably got the biggest game breaker on the field wearing red on Saturday. It's going to be a really fascinating matchup, and I cannot wait. And thank you, Warren Gatland, for giving us a little Tuesday treat. Leave your comments, hit subscribe, because there's a lot of Six Nations coverage and content coming on this very channel.